Widowed rancher needed a wife, yet the only one left was the housekeeper called Lot 18. Thomas Carter stood on the porch of his farmhouse, staring out at the land that had been in his family for generations. The cold wind tugged at his coat, and he took a deep breath, letting the crisp morning air fill his lungs. It should have been a moment of peace, yet his heart felt heavy, weighed down by a sorrow that refused to leave him. It had been almost a year since his wife, Margaret, had passed away, and though the days moved forward, the pain of losing her had only grown sharper with time. Margaret had been more than just his wife. She had been his partner, his confidant, the one person who understood him better than anyone else in the world. She had managed the house with grace, kept the children on track, and had been the heart of the ranch. Her sudden illness had left a void so deep that even the vastness of the Montana plains could not fill it. Every morning, Thomas felt the ache of her absence as he moved through the empty rooms of the farmhouse. The walls seemed to whisper memories of her laughter, the scent of her favorite soap lingering faintly in the air, and the faint marks of her presence were everywhere. The kitchen table, once bustling with the sounds of family meals and shared stories, now stood silent and cold. Thomas had tried to keep busy, throwing himself into the work of the ranch. The cattle still needed feeding, the fences mended, and the fields tended. Yet no matter how hard he worked, the loneliness clung to him like a shadow. Even the children, grown and living in distant cities, could not fill the emptiness. They called when they could, sent letters and packages, but Thomas missed the warmth of having someone by his side, someone who truly belonged there. He realized, slowly and reluctantly, that he needed help, not just for the work but for the life he once shared with Margaret. The thought of finding a new partner was complicated. Thomas was a simple man, used to routine and the straightforward honesty of ranch life. He wasn't sure where to begin. The town nearby was small, and most of the women his age were either married or lived far away. He had considered putting out feelers, asking friends and neighbors, but each time the thought came up, it felt awkward and unnatural. Who would understand the demands of a ranch? Who could step into a life that had already been shaped by Margaret's presence? Thomas knew it wouldn't be easy. As he walked along the path that led to the barn, Thomas thought about the help he already had. For years, there had been a quiet, reliable presence in the household, Emily, the housekeeper. She had been with the family since Margaret had fallen ill, helping to manage the household and care for the children when they were younger. Emily was diligent, meticulous, and deeply loyal. She had never sought attention or praise, quietly performing her duties with a sense of responsibility that Thomas admired. But she was more than just an employee. She had become a part of the household, someone who had seen the family through difficult times and had always been there when needed. What puzzled Thomas, however, was how she came to be known as Lot 18. He had heard the name whispered among the townsfolk, sometimes in curiosity, sometimes in jest. Emily had never explained it fully, and Thomas had never pressed her. There was a certain mystery about her past, a quiet dignity in the way she carried herself. She had grown up on a small plot of land in the area, a plot numbered 18, and somehow the name had stuck. Most people saw her only as the housekeeper, but Thomas sensed there was more beneath the surface. She had a strength that went unnoticed by many, a calmness that could steady even the most chaotic day on the ranch. As Thomas approached the barn, he saw her moving among the animals, her hands steady and sure as she tended to the cattle. Her presence was comforting, like a familiar melody in a song that had once been complete but was now missing its harmony. He realized that in all the months since Margaret's passing, Emily had become an anchor in his life. She was always there, not just performing her duties but understanding the rhythms of the household, noticing the little things that needed attention, anticipating problems before they arose. It struck Thomas that perhaps the answer to his loneliness had been in front of him all along. Yet, he hesitated. The idea of seeing Emily as more than the housekeeper felt strange, even daring. He was a widower, accustomed to a life of quiet solitude, and the thought of changing that routine both intrigued and frightened him. Could he open his heart again? Could he accept someone who had always been near yet had remained at a distance? These questions lingered in his mind as he watched Emily move gracefully among the livestock, her eyes focused, her movements efficient but calm. There was a beauty in her simplicity, a quiet elegance that had never relied on attention or approval. The ranch itself seemed to mirror Thomas's emotions. The land was expansive, stretching as far as the eye could see, beautiful yet demanding. The fields needed constant care, the fences required repairs, and the livestock demanded attention every day, regardless of the weather. In the same way, Thomas's life required constant tending, and he could no longer manage it alone. Emily's help was essential, but he realized it was more than just practical. Her presence brought a sense of stability and warmth that he had been missing. It was a reminder that life, even after loss, could still offer companionship and connection. That evening, Thomas found himself lingering in the kitchen, watching Emily prepare the simple dinner with practiced hands. He had seen her do this countless times, yet tonight, he noticed the way she moved with quiet confidence, the gentle care she took in arranging the dishes, and the way she paused to ensure everything was just right. It was a small, everyday act, but it spoke volumes about her character. Thomas felt a stirring in his heart, a mixture of admiration and something deeper that he had not felt in a long time. As the sun set behind the distant hills, casting a warm glow over the farmhouse, Thomas realized that life was moving forward, whether he wanted it to or not. The pain of losing Margaret would never fully disappear, but perhaps it could coexist with something new, something unexpected. Emily, with her steady presence and quiet strength, represented a possibility he had never considered. She was not just the housekeeper. She was someone who had shared in his family's life, someone who understood the land, the ranch, and the routines that had defined him for so many years. Thomas knew that the path ahead would not be simple. There would be challenges, conversations to be had, and feelings to navigate. But as he looked around the farmhouse, the barn, and the fields stretching into the distance, he felt a sense of hope that had been absent for too long. The answer to his loneliness might not come from a stranger or someone new, but from someone who had quietly been by his side all along. He retired that night with a heavy heart, yes, but also with a spark of anticipation. The ranch was alive with the sounds of the night, crickets chirping, cattle lowing, and the wind rustling through the trees. It was a reminder that life continued, relentless and beautiful in its persistence. And in that life, Thomas sensed that Emily, the mysterious Lot 18, might just be the companion he had been searching for, someone who could help him heal, rebuild, and find joy again. The coming days would bring decisions, conversations, and perhaps even revelations that neither Thomas nor Emily could foresee. But on that quiet night with the stars sparkling above the Montana plains, Thomas felt, for the first time in a long while, that the future might hold something bright, something worth embracing. And he realized that sometimes, the people we need the most are those who have been quietly standing beside us all along, waiting for the right moment to become part of our lives in a way we never imagined. Emily, known quietly in the town as Lot 18, moved through the Carter ranch with a calm efficiency that made the place feel orderly and alive. She had been part of the household for years, arriving during Margaret's illness and staying on after her passing, not because she had to, but because she felt a sense of belonging there. The nickname Lot 18 had stuck from her childhood, when she grew up on a small, numbered plot of land on the outskirts of town. It was a simple beginning, yet it shaped the woman she had become, independent, resilient, and quietly proud. She carried herself with dignity, though she never drew attention to herself. To outsiders, Emily appeared reserved, almost invisible. She worked diligently without complaint, attending to every corner of the ranch and home. From sweeping the barn to tending the vegetable garden, from preparing meals to mending worn-out clothes, she handled it all with a precision that few noticed. But those who paid attention, like Thomas, recognized the extraordinary care she put into every task. Emily did not just work on the ranch, she nurtured it. She understood its rhythms, its needs, and its challenges in a way that came from years of experience and quiet observation. Despite her loyalty and devotion, Emily had always maintained a certain distance. She had no family nearby, no personal ties to the town besides her work at the ranch. This distance gave her a sense of mystery, and locals whispered about her past, curious about the nickname that never seemed to fit a person so private. Lot 18 was all anyone called her, a reference to her childhood plot of land that had been given a number instead of a name. Some joked about it, some wondered why she embraced it, but Emily never answered their questions. She simply continued her work, letting her actions speak for themselves. The nickname carried more than just a story of childhood. It represented a life shaped by responsibility and solitude. Growing up on a numbered plot meant that Emily had learned early how to care for herself and for the land. She had tended animals, grown vegetables, and performed chores that most children of her age would have found burdensome. That hard work had instilled in her a sense of discipline and self-reliance that now benefited the Carter Ranch. Emily's past had taught her patience, diligence, and quiet courage, all qualities that made her indispensable to Thomas. Thomas, observing Emily day after day, began to notice the subtle ways she held the household together. She moved through rooms with purpose, her hands skilled at both heavy labor and delicate tasks. She had a knack for knowing what was needed before anyone asked for it, whether it was repairing a leaky roof, organizing supplies, or offering a comforting word. Her presence brought order to chaos, calm to tension, and warmth to a home that had felt empty since Margaret's passing. There was a softness to Emily, too, beneath her quiet strength. She had a gentle way of speaking, always respectful, always thoughtful. When she laughed, it was sincere and unpretentious, a sound that seemed to brighten the room. When she listened, she gave her full attention, making those around her feel heard and understood. Thomas noticed these qualities more and more, and while he had always respected her as a housekeeper, he now began to see her in a different light. There was depth to Emily, layers that only revealed themselves gradually, like the slow blooming of a flower in spring. Emily's life outside the ranch was simple. She had a small, tidy room above the barn, modestly furnished but clean and welcoming. She spent her evenings reading, writing letters to a distant friend, or occasionally tending a small herb garden by the window. She had few possessions, but each was meaningful. A worn journal, a hand-me-down quilt, and a small collection of photographs told the story of a life lived quietly yet fully. She did not crave attention or wealth. Her satisfaction came from being useful, from seeing the ranch thrive, and from knowing that she had made a difference in the lives of those she cared for. Over the years, Emily had witnessed much on the ranch. She had seen the children grow, celebrated small milestones, and shared in quiet moments of grief. When Margaret had fallen ill, Emily had been a steady presence, offering comfort, preparing meals, and ensuring that the household continued to function despite the chaos. She had done so without complaint, silently carrying the burdens of others while keeping her own heart guarded. That selflessness had become a defining part of her character, one that Thomas now increasingly admired. Despite her dedication, Emily had never overstepped boundaries. She knew her place in the household and respected the family's history and traditions. Yet, she had a presence that could not be ignored. Thomas, in particular, could not help but notice the way she seemed to anticipate needs, the way she could calm restless animals or soothe a frightened child with quiet authority. He began to see her not just as a housekeeper, but as someone with intelligence, compassion, and a deep understanding of life on the ranch. The town's curiosity about Emily did not bother her. People would occasionally ask why she was called Lot 18 or speculate about her past, but she answered with a simple smile or a nod, never revealing more than necessary. There was pride in her independence, a refusal to be defined by others' assumptions. She had built her life carefully, balancing work, solitude, and small joys, and she had no intention of changing for anyone else. Yet she could not deny that she felt a connection to the Carters, especially Thomas, who treated her with a quiet respect that few others had. Thomas, meanwhile, wrestled with his growing awareness of Emily's importance. He had relied on her for years without truly acknowledging the depth of her contributions. Now, he could not imagine managing the ranch without her. He began to see her not merely as an employee, but as someone who had been a constant support, a stabilizing force in his life during the most difficult times. There was a bond between them that had been quietly forming over the years, built on mutual respect, trust, and shared experience. One afternoon, Thomas watched as Emily worked in the barn, her hands skillfully repairing a broken fence while the cattle grazed nearby. The sun caught her hair, and for a moment he saw her not just as a housekeeper but as a woman with strength, grace, and a quiet beauty that went beyond the surface. He realized that he had underestimated the significance of her presence in his life. She had been more than a helper. She had been a part of the fabric of the family, someone who understood its needs, its rhythms, and its unspoken rules. That evening, as the sky turned shades of orange and pink, Thomas and Emily shared a simple dinner. Conversation flowed naturally, easy and unforced. Emily spoke of small memories from her childhood, moments of laughter and hardship, of growing up on Lot 18 and learning responsibility early in life. Thomas listened, intrigued and moved by her stories. He had always known her as dependable and quiet, but now he was beginning to understand the depth of her character, the experiences that had shaped her, the resilience that had carried her through challenges, and the heart that had quietly cared for the family over the years. Thomas realized that Emily was someone rare, someone whose life had been marked by quiet courage and steadfast loyalty. He thought about how few people truly understood the demands of the ranch, the long hours, the physical labor, and the emotional resilience required. Emily had not only met those demands but had exceeded them with grace and dedication. She had been there through sickness and sorrow, through the rhythms of daily life, and through moments of uncertainty. As the days passed, Thomas began to notice more subtle details. The way Emily's presence brought calm to the household, the way her laughter lightened even the heaviest moments, the quiet confidence with which she handled every task. It was impossible for him to ignore her anymore. Emily was not just part of the household. She was part of the heart of the ranch, and Thomas was beginning to recognize how deeply he valued her presence, not only for the work she did, but for the comfort and stability she provided. Emily, meanwhile, remained consistent and humble. She did not seek recognition or reward for her efforts. Her satisfaction came from knowing that the ranch was running smoothly, that the family was cared for, and that she had contributed in meaningful ways. Yet there was a quiet awareness in her that Thomas was noticing her in a new light, and she felt a subtle shift in their dynamic. She had always respected him, admired his strength and dedication, but now there was a new layer of understanding between them, a connection that went beyond work or routine. In the evenings, as they watched the sun set over the rolling fields, Thomas and Emily began to share more than practical concerns. They spoke of memories, hopes, and small dreams. Thomas felt a sense of relief and comfort in her presence, realizing that her companionship went beyond mere assistance. She was someone who understood him, the ranch, and the life he had built. Emily, in turn, felt a sense of belonging and recognition that she had not experienced before. Their bond was growing slowly, naturally, built on years of trust, shared labor, and quiet observation. By the time the stars emerged in the night sky, the connection between Thomas and Emily was unmistakable. The ranch was no longer just a place of work and duty. It was a home, filled with the presence of someone who mattered deeply. Emily, once simply Lot 18, was now someone whose importance could not be measured by tasks or titles. She had become a vital part of Thomas's life, and he was beginning to understand that the answers he had been seeking, companionship, understanding, support, had been standing quietly by his side all along. The days on the Carter ranch moved in a rhythm that had become almost second nature to Thomas and Emily. Mornings were spent tending to the livestock, checking fences, and ensuring that the crops were growing as they should. Afternoons were often quieter, filled with small household tasks and careful maintenance of the land. Yet amidst the work, a new awareness had begun to settle between them, a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in how Thomas looked at Emily and how Emily regarded him in return. It was a quiet awakening, a recognition that the years of shared labor, trust, and understanding had laid the groundwork for something deeper. One crisp morning, as the sun rose over the rolling fields, Thomas found himself walking alongside Emily toward the barn. The air was cool and smelled of hay and fresh earth, a scent he had grown used to over the years, but that now seemed comforting in a new way. Emily moved with her usual efficiency, carrying buckets and tools with practiced ease. Thomas noticed her hands, strong yet delicate, the way her movements were precise without ever appearing rushed. He realized, almost to his surprise, that he had never truly taken the time to see her as more than the housekeeper. She had always been there, a constant presence, but now he felt a pull of curiosity and admiration he hadn't expected. They worked in silence for a while, repairing a broken gate that had been damaged in a recent storm. The rhythm of hammering and tightening bolts created a kind of quiet companionship. Thomas found himself stealing glances at Emily, noticing the small things he had never paid attention to before. The way her hair caught the morning light, the determination in her eyes, and the faint, almost imperceptible smile she offered when she caught him watching. There was a warmth in her presence that he had not realized he had been missing, and it stirred feelings he had long buried after Margaret's passing. After finishing the repairs, Thomas suggested they take a short break and walk toward the edge of the property, where the land sloped gently into a small grove of trees. Emily agreed, carrying a small basket of apples she had picked from the orchard. The air was filled with the scent of apple blossoms and earth, a peaceful contrast to the hard work of the morning. As they walked, Thomas began to speak, tentatively at first, about small memories of the ranch and the way the land had shaped him over the years. Emily listened attentively, nodding and occasionally offering a quiet comment or laugh, her presence comforting and grounding. For the first time in years, Thomas found himself speaking not just of practical matters, but of feelings, of loss, of hope, and of the quiet loneliness that had settled over him since Margaret's death. Emily listened without interruption, her calm demeanor providing a safe space for him to share what he had kept hidden. He told her about the nights he had spent staring at the stars, feeling the absence of Margaret's laughter, and about the struggles of managing the ranch alone. Emily responded with gentle words of understanding, offering empathy without pity, and Thomas felt a sense of relief he had not known in a long time. Emily, too, shared parts of herself during their walk. She spoke of growing up on Lot 18, the small plot of land that had given her the nickname the town still used, and the lessons she had learned from a childhood of responsibility and independence. She spoke of her love for the land, the satisfaction of tending to animals, and the quiet joys she found in simple routines. Thomas listened with growing admiration, realizing that Emily's life experiences had shaped her into someone strong, capable, and deeply wise. Her stories revealed resilience, patience, and a heart that had quietly endured challenges while remaining compassionate and kind. As the afternoon sun climbed higher, they settled under the shade of a large oak tree. Emily offered Thomas an apple from her basket, and he accepted with a small, appreciative smile. There was a comfort in this simple act, a moment of normalcy that felt rare and precious. They spoke of ordinary things, the weather, the crops, the plans for the barn. But beneath the surface, there was a growing sense of connection, a recognition that they were beginning to understand each other in ways that went beyond words or tasks. Over the following days, Thomas found himself thinking about Emily more often, noticing the subtle ways her presence affected his life. He realized that the ranch, which had once felt lonely and burdensome, now seemed brighter and more alive when she was around. Her laughter, soft and sincere, filled the spaces that had been silent for too long. Her quiet efficiency and attention to detail relieved burdens he had carried alone, and her gentle understanding offered a sense of companionship he had not thought possible. Emily, in turn, began to notice the changes in Thomas. She observed how he would pause during the day to glance her way, the way his expression softened when she was near, and the small, unspoken gestures that suggested he valued her more than he had admitted. She felt a mixture of emotions, curiosity, warmth, and a cautious hope that the bond forming between them could become something more meaningful. She had always cared for the family, and now she realized that her feelings for Thomas had grown beyond duty and loyalty. One evening, after a long day of work, Thomas invited Emily to sit on the porch with him while they watched the sunset. The sky was painted in hues of orange, pink, and purple, a breathtaking display that made the land seem almost magical. Thomas spoke of memories from his past, of Margaret, and of the lessons he had learned from life on the ranch. Emily listened quietly, offering her thoughts and reflections, and the conversation soon turned to dreams for the future, small hopes, plans for the ranch, and the desire for companionship. The conversation that evening marked a turning point. For the first time, Thomas spoke openly about his loneliness and his longing for someone to share his life with. He admitted, hesitantly, that he had begun to notice Emily in a new way, that her presence had become essential to his sense of well-being. Emily, her heart beating faster, acknowledged that she had felt the same connection growing, though she had been careful not to overstep boundaries. The honesty in their words created a bridge between them, a shared understanding that went beyond work, routine, or friendship. In the weeks that followed, their bond deepened naturally. They worked side by side, shared meals, and spent quiet evenings talking under the stars. Each interaction revealed more about their personalities, their values, and their dreams. Thomas admired Emily's resilience, intelligence, and compassion. Emily admired Thomas's integrity, dedication, and kindness. Together, they discovered a rhythm that was both comforting and exhilarating, a partnership built on trust, respect, and the slow unfolding of mutual affection. Small gestures became meaningful symbols of their growing connection. A hand brushed against another while passing tools, a shared smile across the barn, or a quiet word of encouragement became moments that lingered in their minds. These were not grand declarations of love, but subtle acknowledgments that their hearts were slowly opening to each other. The ranch, once a place of work and duty, had become a space of emotional discovery, where the two of them could explore feelings that had been dormant for too long. Thomas began to realize that Emily's presence had changed his life in ways he had not anticipated. He felt lighter, more hopeful, and more capable of facing the challenges of the ranch. Her support allowed him to focus on the work without feeling burdened, and her companionship filled the emptiness that had haunted him since Margaret's passing. He began to understand that love could emerge slowly, quietly and unexpectedly, sometimes from the person who had been there all along. Emily, too, felt a growing sense of security and warmth. She had always been careful with her heart, cautious about revealing too much of herself. But Thomas's openness, respect, and consistent kindness encouraged her to lower her guard. She began to imagine a future where her life and work on the ranch were intertwined with Thomas, not just as a housekeeper, but as a partner. The thought was both thrilling and comforting, a possibility she had not dared to hope for until now. Their connection was not without challenges. Both were aware of the delicate balance between affection and propriety, between personal desire and responsibility to the family and the ranch. Yet the trust and understanding they had built over years allowed them to navigate these complexities with care. Each conversation, each shared moment, strengthened the bond, creating a foundation that was both stable and nurturing. By the end of the season, Thomas and Emily had established a partnership that extended beyond work. They shared stories, supported each other through challenges, and celebrated small victories together. The ranch thrived under their combined efforts, and their personal connection deepened in parallel. What had begun as quiet admiration and respect had blossomed into a relationship characterized by trust, affection, and a mutual understanding of each other's strengths and vulnerabilities. It was in these everyday moments, the shared laughter, the quiet conversations, the long hours of work side by side, that Thomas and Emily discovered the true depth of their connection. The ranch, once a place of routine and solitude, had become a space where love could grow quietly, steadily, and resiliently. And in that realization, they both found hope, joy, and the promise of a future neither had expected but both now cherished. Winter had arrived on the Montana plains, painting the ranch in shades of white and gray. The cold winds swept across the fields, and a thick layer of snow blanketed the fences and barns. It was a beautiful yet harsh season, one that tested even the strongest ranchers. Thomas had managed winters before, but this one felt different. The ranch was more isolated than ever, and the biting cold made even the simplest tasks more difficult. Yet, Thomas was not alone. Emily, the quiet and dependable presence in his life, was there beside him, ready to face the challenges that the winter would bring. The first major storm of the season arrived unexpectedly, a fierce blizzard that left the ranch buried under several feet of snow. The wind howled like a living creature, rattling windows and shaking the barn doors. Thomas and Emily worked tirelessly to secure the livestock, moving them to sheltered areas and ensuring that the fences, weakened by earlier storms, were reinforced. The work was exhausting, and the cold seeped through their clothes, chilling them to the bone. Yet they moved with a shared determination, each understanding that the survival of the ranch depended on their cooperation and skill. As they trudged through the deep snow, Emily's calm efficiency amazed Thomas. She directed him with quiet authority, knowing exactly what needed to be done, whether it was moving animals, stacking hay, or repairing broken gates. Despite the harsh conditions, she never complained, and her determination gave Thomas strength. For the first time, he saw her not just as a housekeeper or companion, but as an equal partner, someone whose resilience and intelligence matched his own. He felt a surge of admiration, tempered with a new, deeper respect that bordered on affection. During one particularly fierce part of the storm, Thomas and Emily discovered that one of the barns had been damaged. A portion of the roof had collapsed under the weight of the snow, threatening to expose the animals to the freezing cold. Thomas assessed the situation quickly, and Emily immediately joined him in the repair work. They carried heavy beams, hammered nails, and braced the structure against the wind. Every movement required coordination, every decision demanded trust. In those moments, the years of shared experience and understanding became their greatest asset. The storm raged for days, and they found themselves working side by side for long hours, often in near darkness with only lanterns to guide them. Thomas marveled at Emily's courage and determination. She did not falter or complain, even when the wind threatened to knock them off their feet. She adapted to every challenge, finding solutions to problems as they arose, and remained calm when Thomas feared for their safety. In the midst of adversity, he realized that Emily's strength was not just physical, it was emotional, mental, and unwavering. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, they returned to the farmhouse, exhausted and covered in snow. Thomas lit the fireplace, and the warm glow filled the room, chasing away the chill of the storm. Emily removed her boots and coat, her cheeks flushed from the cold and exertion. For a moment they sat in silence, catching their breath and allowing themselves a rare moment of rest. Thomas looked at Emily, noticing the quiet determination still in her eyes despite the exhaustion. He realized that he had never seen anyone face hardship with such grace and resilience. Over the next few days, the storm began to subside, leaving the ranch covered in a pristine layer of snow. The livestock were safe, the barns repaired, and the fences reinforced. Yet the experience had changed something between Thomas and Emily. They had faced extreme challenges together, and in doing so, they had discovered a new level of trust and reliance on each other. Thomas found that he could depend on Emily not only for practical matters, but also for guidance, support, and emotional strength. Emily, in turn, saw Thomas in a new light, as a man capable of vulnerability, openness, and appreciation for the partnership they shared. One afternoon, as the sun began to melt the snow and the first signs of spring approached, Thomas suggested they take a walk around the property. The snow was melting, revealing the brown earth beneath, and the crisp air carried the promise of new growth. As they walked, Thomas spoke about the challenges of the storm, reflecting on how difficult it had been and how fortunate he felt to have Emily by his side. Emily listened, nodding and offering insights about what they could do to prepare for future winters. Her words were thoughtful, practical, and full of wisdom gained from years of experience. During the walk, Thomas shared more about his own fears and uncertainties, admitting that he had doubted his ability to manage the ranch alone and to navigate life without Margaret. Emily listened with compassion, never judging, never interrupting, allowing him to speak freely. Her understanding and patience created a space where Thomas felt safe to express his vulnerabilities. It was a moment of emotional intimacy that deepened their connection, revealing that their bond was based not only on shared work, but also on mutual trust and respect. As they returned to the farmhouse, Thomas realized that he could no longer imagine facing life without Emily. Her presence had become essential, not just for the ranch but for his heart and mind. He began to consider the possibility of a future together, one where they would not only share responsibilities but also share life itself. Yet he was cautious, aware of the delicate balance between personal feelings and the established roles they had maintained for so long. He knew that any step forward would require honesty, care, and sensitivity. Emily, too, felt the weight of the moment. She had always been careful with her heart, maintaining a professional distance while caring deeply for the family and the ranch. Yet, the shared experience of the storm had revealed the depth of her own feelings. She realized that she valued Thomas not only as a man of integrity and strength, but also as someone who respected her, understood her, and saw her as an equal. The bond they shared had grown beyond practicality and duty. It had become personal, emotional, and deeply meaningful. In the days that followed, their relationship continued to evolve. Small gestures became more frequent and meaningful. A hand on a shoulder during work, a shared smile over a simple accomplishment, or a thoughtful word of encouragement. Each interaction reinforced the trust and affection that had been quietly growing between them. They discovered that their connection was not based solely on romantic feelings, but on a profound understanding of each other's character, values, and experiences. Thomas began to see Emily as more than a housekeeper. She was a partner in every sense of the word. He valued her opinion, sought her guidance, and relied on her insight. Emily, in turn, found joy in the shared responsibilities, the companionship, and the growing emotional closeness. Together, they navigated the challenges of the ranch, from managing livestock to planning for future seasons, with a renewed sense of purpose and collaboration. One evening, as they sat by the fire after a long day, Thomas finally allowed himself to speak from the heart. He told Emily that he admired her strength, resilience, and unwavering support. He admitted that he had begun to feel something more than friendship, something deeper that he could not ignore. Emily, her heart swelling with emotion, acknowledged that she had felt the same way, though she had been cautious about expressing it. The honesty of their conversation created a new foundation for their relationship, one built on mutual respect, trust, and genuine affection. From that moment on, Thomas and Emily began to explore the possibility of a life together. They continued to work side by side on the ranch, but now there was a sense of partnership that extended beyond tasks and responsibilities. Their connection was emotional, intellectual, and practical, a rare combination that strengthened with each passing day. They discovered that facing challenges together, from storms to daily routines, had forged a bond that was resilient, enduring, and deeply meaningful. As the winter gave way to spring, the ranch began to bloom once again. The snow melted, revealing fertile soil and green shoots of grass. Livestock thrived, crops began to grow, and the farmhouse felt alive with warmth and activity. Thomas and Emily, united by shared experience and growing affection, felt a renewed sense of hope and purpose. They had faced adversity together and emerged stronger, more connected, and more certain of the path they wanted to follow. By the time the first flowers appeared in the fields, Thomas and Emily had not only survived the harsh winter, but had also discovered the depth of their bond. They realized that love and partnership were not just about grand gestures or declarations, but about shared experiences, mutual support, and the quiet understanding that comes from truly knowing another person. Their relationship had been tested by the storm, strengthened by shared labor, and deepened by honesty and trust. Thomas looked at Emily one evening as they watched the sunset over the ranch, the sky painted in brilliant shades of orange and pink. He saw not just the housekeeper he had relied on for years, but a partner, a companion, and a woman whose strength, wisdom, and heart had become essential to his own life. Emily, in turn, looked at Thomas and saw a man who valued her, respected her, and shared a vision for the future that included her at its center. Together, they had navigated hardship, discovered trust, and found the beginnings of a love that was both steady and profound. Spring had finally arrived on the Montana plains, bringing with it a sense of renewal and hope. The snow had melted completely, revealing the rich earth beneath and the first signs of green shoots and blossoms. The ranch, which had endured the harsh winter, now thrived with new energy. Livestock grazed on the fresh grass, the fences were sturdy, and the barns stood strong, ready to face the seasons ahead. For Thomas and Emily, the changing landscape mirrored the transformation in their lives. The long months of winter, the shared struggles, and the deep conversations had brought them closer than either of them had imagined possible. Thomas found himself waking up each morning with a sense of anticipation he had not felt in years. The farmhouse, once quiet and empty, now felt alive with the presence of someone who understood him, shared his burdens, and filled his heart with warmth. Emily, as steady and diligent as ever, had become more than a housekeeper. She was a partner in every sense, someone whose opinions mattered, whose laughter brought joy, and whose very presence made life brighter. Thomas realized that the emptiness he had felt since Margaret's passing was slowly being replaced by hope and companionship, and it was all because of Emily. One morning, Thomas suggested they take a walk across the fields to inspect the new growth and check on the fences. Emily agreed, carrying a small basket of tools and supplies, her practical nature shining through even in moments of calm. As they walked together, Thomas spoke about his plans for the ranch, the improvements he wanted to make, and his hopes for the future. Emily listened attentively, offering thoughtful advice and occasionally teasing him gently when his ideas were ambitious. Their conversation flowed naturally, blending practical matters with personal reflections, laughter, and the quiet comfort of shared understanding. During their walk, Thomas stopped near a small grove of trees, where the ground was covered in wild flowers and fresh grass. He turned to Emily, his heart racing with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. He spoke from the heart, expressing how much he had come to rely on her, not just for her work, but for her companionship, her wisdom, and her unwavering support. Emily's eyes met his, and she felt a warmth spread through her chest, a reflection of the feelings she had been carefully nurturing for months. In that moment, the unspoken bond between them became clear, and both understood that they wanted to take their relationship to the next level. As the days passed, Thomas and Emily began to imagine life together beyond the boundaries of work and routine. They discussed their dreams, their hopes, and how they could build a life that honored the past while embracing the future. Thomas spoke of preserving the ranch for future generations, ensuring it remained a place of stability and prosperity. Emily shared her desire to contribute in meaningful ways, not just through labor but through partnership, support, and shared responsibility. Their visions aligned, and a sense of excitement for the future grew stronger with each passing day. The town, which had long known Emily simply as Lot 18, began to notice subtle changes in their relationship. Friends and neighbors saw the quiet glances, the small gestures of care, and the way Thomas and Emily worked together seamlessly. Some were curious, others delighted, but all recognized that something special was unfolding. Emily, once content to remain in the background, now began to accept that her place in Thomas's life was not just functional, it was central. She felt valued, respected, and cherished in ways she had never imagined. One afternoon, Thomas decided it was time to make their commitment official. He had thought about it for weeks, carefully planning a simple gesture that reflected their shared life and the depth of their bond. He invited Emily to the orchard, where the apple trees were beginning to bloom, a symbol of new beginnings and growth. The air was fragrant with blossoms, and the soft sunlight created a gentle warmth that contrasted with the lingering chill of early spring. Thomas took Emily's hand, feeling the strength and steadiness she had brought to his life, and spoke words that had been on his heart for a long time. He expressed his admiration, his gratitude, and his love. He told her that he could no longer imagine his life without her, that she had become his partner, his confidant, and the one he wanted to share every future moment with. Emily, her eyes glistening with emotion, acknowledged that she felt the same way. She had long cared for Thomas, admired his strength, and been drawn to his kindness, integrity, and resilience. Their mutual recognition of these feelings created a profound sense of relief, joy, and anticipation for the life they would build together. The decision to unite their lives brought a renewed sense of purpose to the ranch. Thomas and Emily began to plan their home and daily routines with a sense of shared vision. They worked together not only on practical matters, but also on creating a home that reflected their partnership, filled with warmth, laughter, and the quiet joys of daily life. Meals were shared with greater ease, chores became collaborative efforts, and the simple acts of care and attention strengthened their emotional bond. The ranch, once a symbol of isolation and hard work, became a place of connection, love, and fulfillment. Their bond also extended to the community. Friends and neighbors, who had long respected both Thomas and Emily, celebrated their union with genuine warmth. The story of the widowed rancher and the housekeeper known as Lot 18 became a tale of hope, resilience, and the unexpected ways life can bring people together. Emily, once seen as a quiet and mysterious figure, was now recognized for her strength, wisdom, and heart. Thomas, who had once struggled with loneliness, found joy, companionship, and love he had feared lost forever. Over time, their relationship deepened even further. They learned to anticipate each other's needs, to communicate with subtle gestures, and to support one another in both work and personal matters. Challenges still arose, storms, repairs, and the demands of ranch life, but they faced them together, confident in their ability to rely on one another. Each success, each shared moment, reinforced their partnership and strengthened the foundation of trust and affection they had built. Thomas and Emily also took time to nurture the softer aspects of life. They shared quiet evenings by the fireplace, reading, talking, and planning for the future. They celebrated milestones, from the birth of new calves to the blossoming of the orchard, appreciating the small joys that made their life meaningful. Emily found fulfillment not only in her work, but in the deep emotional connection she shared with Thomas. Thomas, in turn, discovered that love could be patient, enduring, and quietly transformative, offering companionship and strength in ways he had never expected. One afternoon, as they walked hand in hand across the fields, Thomas reflected on the journey that had brought them together. The loneliness he had once felt, the struggles of the ranch, and the quiet years of observation had all led to this moment, a partnership built on trust, respect, and love. Emily, sensing his thoughts, squeezed his hand gently, a silent acknowledgement of the bond they shared. It was a simple gesture, yet it carried the weight of shared experience, mutual admiration, and a commitment to face life together. As the seasons continued to change, Thomas and Emily embraced the future with hope and confidence. The ranch flourished under their combined care, and their personal relationship grew stronger with each passing day. They celebrated the small victories and weathered the challenges, always side by side. Their love was steady, resilient, and rooted in the shared understanding that life was best faced together. The hardships they had endured only made their connection more profound, creating a partnership that was unshakable and enduring. The story of Thomas and Emily, the widowed rancher and the housekeeper known as Lot 18, became a quiet legend in the town. It was a tale of unexpected love, of patience, and of the recognition that sometimes the person you need most has been quietly standing beside you all along. Their journey was not marked by grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but by the steady accumulation of trust, care, and shared experience. It was a love built on respect, understanding, and the deep knowledge of each other's hearts. In the end, Thomas found companionship and love he had feared lost forever, while Emily discovered a place where she was valued, cherished, and recognized for her contributions to both the ranch and Thomas's life. Together, they created a life that balanced work, joy, and emotional fulfillment, a life that honored the past while embracing the possibilities of the future. Their days were filled with laughter, purpose, and a quiet contentment that came from knowing they were truly partners in every sense of the word. And so, as the sun set over the rolling Montana plains, casting long shadows across the fields and bathing the ranch in a warm, golden light, Thomas and Emily stood together on the porch of the farmhouse. They looked out at the land they had worked so hard to care for, at the animals grazing peacefully, and at the home that now held not just memories of the past but the promise of a shared future. In that moment, they knew that they had found something rare and precious, a love built on trust, resilience, and the quiet certainty that they were meant to face life's challenges together. Life on the ranch continued, as it always had, with early mornings, long days, and the constant demands of the land. But now, Thomas and Emily faced each day not alone but together, with hearts full of gratitude, respect, and love. They had discovered that true partnership is born not from circumstance alone, but from shared effort, mutual support, and the courage to open one's heart when the time is right. And in that discovery, they found a happiness that was steady, enduring, and deeply fulfilling, a happiness that would carry them through all the seasons of life, side by side.